Love it or hate it, it might actually be happening. That's right. Cedar Fair and Six Flags have announced a prospective date of closing the merger. That's July 1st, 2024. Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans because that's who we are and that's who we care about. So, Ryan, after months and months of people asking when, we do finally have that date of expectation of July 1st.
Yeah, they did disclose in their press release that they have not necessarily covered all the hurdles from the Department of Justice and different regulators and so on, but they believe that the date is going to be July 1st, 2024, which leaves us just over 2 weeks to enjoy Kings Island as just a Cedar Fair park, if you think about it that way. But we're going to get into a little bit of who they've announced, who the senior leadership's going to be, just for the sake of semantics, but mainly none of that matters. A lot of people are arguing online about the corporate governance and who's going to control what and so on. But what it all comes down to is the guest experience. Now, one thing that we did learn, and this is not necessarily tantamount, but you can use it as a model. In 2006, when Cedar Fair purchased the Paramount Parks, very little changed. And I expect the same to be true for 2024 with this season. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, you're not going to see anything really noticeable change. You might see a different name tag, that the associates are wearing. You might see some different merch showing up that has the Six Flags branding in it. But other than that, I think the guest experience will be pretty much, what you've seen this year, last year. It'll still be Kings Island for the rest of this year at least.
Exactly. And it's I know that they fully intended for this merger to go through, but part of operating as a business is you also have to work with a worst case scenario where maybe it falls apart. So if it's ever a testament to the pre-planning that it takes to run a season, I bet a lot of everything planned from now all the way up to, and maybe even including some of Winterfest, is already planned out. So they're not going to pivot just because the merger went through.
No, but I do think next year will probably be a hard year, across all of the parks, because that's what it was like, with Cedar Fair in 2007. There weren't any new rides or anything really going in. 2008 changed a couple of names, still not a lot coming in, just because the money wasn't there to do it. So I would think that, if you're expecting some 30, 40, $1 million roller coaster to be put in the vortex spot in the next year or two, that's unrealistic to be thinking that, because the money that is being spent just to get this deal closed, and then, both parks, the reason they're doing this merger to begin with, not in the best position to be, spending that kind of money. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a while before you see, the big major new things going back in, and that might be 2026 at the earliest, but 2027, 2028, maybe 2029. There's a lot to, they're going to have to trim, to get everything in line before they can start really spending again. And we're not just talking about now the number of Cedar Fair parks. We're talking, you got almost 40 something properties now when you look at all the different parks in the chain.
So, I from my standpoint, I think it would be improper or like a little bit out of line for us to kind of speculate, about the financial situation or whatever, mainly because we don't know the market outlook for the next 2 or 3 years as well. But one of the things that people have brought up kind of often is that, if they merge, there's 40 whatever properties. So that means that Kings Island's probably hardly ever going to get a big investment, and, because it's just going to be lost in the mix. Do you think that's true? Or do you think that because the revenue is going to be doubled or more, that there's just going to be more money to go around, and Kings Island is still going to be one of the best attended parks in this chain?
My guess is you're going to have the haves: Kings Island, Cedar Point, Canada's Wonderland, Six Flags Great Adventure, Magic Mountain, those kind of parks. You're going to have the haves, and you're going to have the have-nots. And the have-nots, you're probably going to have to make do a lot with what you have. You might get a new show, a small flat ride here and there, but it may be years before you see that, you know, uh, that new coaster that's, a record breaker, or, you know, something that, is maybe 20, 25, $30 million
Mhm.
that goes in. And then the parks that are the haves, they'll still continue to see those significant investments. That's my guess.
So would you postulate that not a lot changes then? Because we talk about they invest in Magic Mountain, they invest in Kings Island, they invest in Cedar Point. They typically don't invest in, you know, Michigan's Adventure, Darien Lake, places like that. So I guess if we think about it from that
Six
standpoint,
Flags America, those kind of parks. Yeah,
yeah, it's I guess not a lot's going to change. But the real question that's on my mind is how do they handle the season pass thing? Because on one hand, you just double the value of your pass if it's good for all the parks, essentially, no matter what chains season pass you have. On the other hand, most people buy like the multi-park pass for two particular parks. In this market, it's Kings Island and Cedar Point, maybe Carowinds and Kings Dominion, and so on. So do you jack up the price of that, saying like, oh, you can get into 40 properties now when the real added value isn't that
I don't
crazy?
think they'll do
Or
that. No, I don't think they'll do that. And if you look at the Six Flags, parks, their top pass, I mean, it's very affordable. Comes with great perks. You're already able to visit all of their parks, all their water parks, which were more than what you have with Cedar Fair. And, they didn't have higher prices on the passes than Cedar Fair. So I don't see the season pass price, you know, jumping significantly. I think it'll still be, that opportunity. What is it now what was it for the gold pass that you bought? What,
it was like 120, 130, somewhere around there.
120, 130. So, okay, maybe if they raise it to 150, 170, it's still, I mean, that's a great deal, great value. So I don't think you're going to see, somebody told me it's going to probably cost us $350, $400 for an all parks, passport next year. I don't think so. Could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Well, yeah, to clarify, my pass, the 120, 130 was just a gold pass. The all park passport, I think, was an additional 100. Where
Yeah.
but the thing that was, we're kind of going into, untreaded territory, because who's to stop them from making an Ohio add-on where it's good for Cedar Point and Kings Island, or a
Well, there's a lot of possibilities they can work with. You go out in California, you could do a deal there with all the California parks that they'll
I
have.
think that's the direction they'll go, because that would be smarter to have $100 add-on that's a Ohio passport, but have a $250 add-on that's a nationwide passport. That's what I would do. I'm not trying to put ideas in their heads, but that seems like it would make the most sense.
You've got about 6 weeks to roll out your 2025 season pass plan. So say it closes on July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
6-7 weeks later, you're announcing 2025 season passes. Now, I'm sure they've had discussions and they know, what they're looking to do moving forward in that. But I don't think that we're going to see a dramatic change for next year. Now, 2026, that's when I think that you'll see everything more fully integrated by that point in time.
Maybe they have a handshake agreement as to how they're going to handle it. In fact, it'd be foolish for them not to. But
I mean, it could be like a grandfather thing in for maybe the next year or 2 years or whatever. It's the same thing. That there's the Cedar Fair parks, there's the Six Flags parks, and then eventually it all gets integrated together. But they'll have a nice cohesive plan. And when that time comes to, blend it all together, I'm sure there are a lot of smart people involved, that it'll be, well done, and it'll be executed well.
Yeah. So just to roll up exactly what they announced today, upon closing the transaction, Richard Zimmerman, who's a Cedar Fair guy, he's the president and CEO of Cedar Fair, former Paramount, will serve as president and chief executive officer of the combined company. Salim Basul, president and chief executive officer of Six Flags, will serve as executive chairman and the combined company's board of directors. The following leaders have been assigned, and it's weird how lopsided this is for Cedar Fair, but Tim Fisher, COO, which is his current position at Cedar Fair. Brian Withrow, chief financial officer, same deal. Brian Nurse, chief legal compliance officer and corporate secretary, same position at Cedar Fair. Christian Diekman, is that how you pronounce it?
Yep.
Chief Strategy Officer, same position as Cedar Fair. Gary Mick, Chief Integration Officer, currently Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at Six Flags. So that's really the only Six Flags person in, but it's a very important role.
Now in those roles, but
Those
what
roles,
you don't,
yes.
what you don't see there is, who's involved in terms of going to be doing the the website, the apps, the technology pieces of it there. Who's the marketing leads? They took marketing out of the Cedar Fair parks. They had the brand teams with Cedar Fair. Does that stay in place? You don't see that. What's happening there? Do they put marketing directors back in all the parks? Nobody knows what's going to happen. Entertainment. It's not saying, does the Cedar Fair corporate entertainment, do they continue to do all of the entertainment for all the parks? Or do the Six Flags, their entertainment, does that, nobody knows what's happening with those positions. So there's still a lot of unknowns out there.
There are. And to clarify, again, there's a lot of people out there that's like, there's nothing to worry about because
when you see these names
people taking over.
Roll out, though, those names you rolled out, those people aren't doing the things that are really impacting the guest experience. They're not the ones that are putting the season pass plans together and doing all the different special offers and things on the website and the different marketing plans. And that they're not, I mean, they obviously approve it all. They see it before it gets rolled out and that. But in terms of impacting what you would see at the park level, food and beverage and what the culinary experience could turn into, what the entertainment offerings could be, that's all below them. So there's a lot of, it's great, all these Cedar Fair people are still going to be running the show, and that, are they? Nobody knows yet.
I think that it's fair to say that the vision that they have sticks around, which is positive if you enjoy the Cedar Fair experience. But you're right. We don't know if, are they going to have this brand governance that they have now? Personally, I don't think it works. And in fact, I think that there's plenty of data to back that up. Six Flags doesn't do that. But at the same time, it's cheaper. So maybe they will do that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. You know what, though, Ryan, I will tell you that there's something to be said for having your marketing team, on property.
There is.
That they're in the park. They have their finger on the pulse of the vibe, what's happening. And when you're doing it with the brand teams, it's more of a cookie cutter approach. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing a lot of the same, type things getting rolled out to all the parks. All the parks are different. Their own unique individual thing, which you had when the marketing was done at the park levels. So, like I said, it's better that way overall. But you mentioned the cost savings and all that. The synergies maybe are a little bit better. There's maybe, the messaging is more consistent across the board on what they would like it to be at the corporate level. There's nobody going rogue at the park levels the way it's done right now. So I don't know how that's all going to be, but time's going to tell. And I don't think you're going to see anything change though for like 2024, maybe even going into 2025 in that regard. Now, Ryan,
I think they'll have their ducks in order more for 2025.
Yeah, I will ask you this though. What do you think the first thing will be that guests will notice where, okay, we're now living in a different world?
This year or next year?
Just, it doesn't matter when. What do you think that first move will be where you that something's different?
I know exactly what it's going to be. It's because it's the same thing as last time. They won't be told to do this, but you're going to have 16-year-old ride ops spieling on the ride saying, enjoy the rest of your day at Six Flags Kings Island. That's what people are going to notice first.
Okay. I wasn't thinking, like some of the things like that, but I think for me, but I think the first change that guests will notice will come during the Halloween season.
Okay.
And I think, I don't know if that means a rebrand of the name, but I think that some of the you're going to look for opportunities, ways to, get more guests to open their wallets, and that I can see adopting what Six Flags does, and the indoor mazes become upcharge attractions.
As early as this year, you think?
I don't think as early as this year, but I would think I wouldn't be surprised if it's this year, but by 2025, I would not be surprised if, it's like buying a fast lane. If you want to go through the mazes, here's what you got to do. and you would get to do that. It's worked well for the Six Flags parks doing it that way. It's turned out to be a better experience for the guests, because that the people going through the mazes, wanted to go through the mazes. They, invested to go through the mazes. Puts a little pressure on the park because you got to deliver now, right? You got to make sure that you got it staffed and everything like that. But you don't have people, standing around and, lines that are an hour, hour and a half, and then you're putting 28 people at the same time trying to go through. It solves that problem. Just makes it a much, much better experience. So my guess is, if I was asked what I think the first thing I would notice or that the guests might see that it's a new world we're living in now with the combined company, I would say something with the Halloween Haunt event would be where that first kind of noticeable change comes.
Do you want me to tell you about my fear with that? Because I've had that discussion many, many times with either upcharging for the mazes or making it a separately ticketed event like Not Scary Farm. You know what my fear is with that, honestly? I wouldn't be against it. My fear, though, is they make it an upcharge. This is going to be a bigger, better, gorier, bloodier Halloween Haunt or Fear Fest or whatever they would call it if they changed it. And they do make it a little bit better, but that's what you get for the next 15 years. Because how many of the mazes that they have at Kings Island now are decade old, whatever. And so
we're not saying that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But that was the easiest thing that I saw where there was opportunity, that the Cedar Fair parks weren't doing, that the Six Flags parks were, and that I thought the Six Flags parks were doing very well, by doing it that way. And now I'm talking, Six Flags Great America in Chicago, Six Flags St. Louis, those are the ones that I know, had that experience that way where, you paid if you wanted the mazes, and it was a better experience.
Do you think that would fly with the crowd at Kings Island that is used to for the past 24 years having it included with park admission? Do you think that would be too much of a pain point, or do you think it would work?
Well, you'd upgrade the scare zones for sure, just for those that didn't want, to buy that add-on to go through the mazes. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's always going to be somebody that's going to react a certain way. You got to do what's best in the long run, for your the park, the company, the event. You got to look at it that way. But I think that's something that it's just around the corner. It's a way for them to take a look at it, in the fall, evaluate all the parks, what's working, what's not working during the Halloween season, and come 2025, you've taken the best of both worlds and made it one.
Yeah. Well, the thing that comes to
mind, I
pick
that because I do know that if you're doing that and you're trying to take the best of both worlds, that does work at those parks. It does become a better experience at the Halloween events.
Yeah. Well, okay. The thing that keeps on popping in my mind, and again, I'm not necessarily against anything you're saying. If they want to have like a really good experience that's not so cookie cutter and kind of passe now, and they want to charge $20-$25 to go through the mazes, like I would pay for that. My issue is that I remember Winterfest 2005, I guess 2004, whenever it came back, when it was a great event. The new one's better. Okay, that's off the table. But it was a fantastic event, and they weren't charging much for it. It was like $25. But people were so used to like, what do you mean my pass doesn't get me in for Winterfest? Nobody went.
I don't think they would do that. I don't think that would change. I just
no. I'm not suggesting that your season pass won't get you in. But what I'm saying is, for the past 24 years, including this year, your season pass got you in and got you through the mazes. All of a sudden, it doesn't. Like that sunk the first year of Winterfest. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So
like I said, there'd be some disappointment. But I think there are some of the haunt fans, the true haunt fans. I think they would appreciate an elevated, enhanced experience. They want it to be scarier. They want it to be edgier, and that's one of the ways you can do it.
I agree. So,
but again, that's just out of the box thinking that doesn't, don't go, posting all over social media that this is going to happen because we don't know. But we just have been asked, what we think might change or what would be noticeable in that, and that just comes to mind to me because I experienced those different Halloween events and just liked how those were done and thought that's an easy thing to do.
Yeah. So listeners, What do you think is going to be the first thing that you notice if this merger goes through? Put in the comments below down there. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. That's also important. But yeah, let us know what you think is going to be the first thing. And in addition to that, follow it up with, do you think this is good, bad, or indifferent? Do you think that your experience from the guest standpoint is going to be improved, diminished, or remain about the same following this merger? But speaking of mergers, I'm currently wearing jeans, but they need to be merged with something to cover my upper body, as in a la a t-shirt. Don, if you could recommend a t-shirt, what would it be?
Big fan of t-shirts, especially ones of things that I really enjoy and love. And that could be Tower Topics. If you're a fan of the show, you can purchase one of our Tower Topics shirts. Just message us through our X, Tower_Topics. We'll send you the QR code to make your purchase. It's done through Venmo. It's $22. That includes shipping. Available in a lot of different size ranges. They get shipped within a matter of days. And Ryan, I don't know about you, but it's been kind of cool to, whether I'm at Kings Island or maybe I'm out in the grocery store. I was at Meijer a few days ago and saw somebody wearing a Tower Topic shirt. That's kind of cool to see something you and I are involved in, and building and starting to see those shirts out and about.
Yeah, it's real. It's really cool to see that, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate. Don appreciates your support, especially not just listening to the show and so on, but also buying the merchandise and helping us spread the word by wearing the shirt, especially around the park. So thank you so much. But yeah, Tower Topics t-shirt, $22 shipped. All right, we'll be right back with the listener question. All right, first listener question. That's from Paul P. from Batavia, Ohio. I almost read his name as Paul P. Batavia from Ohio. But I'll go ahead and read this. Ryan and Don, you've been co-hosting the Tower Topics podcast for about a year now. What has been your most rewarding part of doing the show?
I'll let you start, Ryan.
So, it's hard to say rewarding because that's such a wide net to cast. Obviously, we've had a lot of success with it. It's growing rather quickly. That's all rewarding. But my favorite part of doing the show is every single episode, there's something. So there's two types of episodes. Like there's three. There's historical ones when we talk about the Bavarian beetle and stuff like that. And I'm learning along with you guys because this is just me asking Don questions because he remembers this stuff because he's older than the Christ child. And then there's, for me, the nostalgic one. So that's the other one. So when we talk about things like, action theater, Simon Says, for those of you who remember that, the Attitude Store, which we referred to as the Rock Shop in one episode. It was called Attitudes, but everyone called it the Rock Shop. So that's kind of like a nostalgic thing. So that really kind of excites me. And then when we have current events, I really look forward to being able to discuss that because Don and I talk about Kings Island all the time. We're just recording it at this point. It has a little bit more structure. But for example, if for those of you who are listening to this chronologically, we just recorded an episode about the Gazillion Bubble show. I saw the show. I really enjoyed the show. I've been looking forward for days to recording an episode talking about how much I enjoyed it and to spread the word about it. What about you, Don?
Well, I agree with you about the word rewarding and that. I think for me, it's always nice to hear, the feedback from our listeners. They'll come up to us and say how much they enjoy the show. So there's that part of it. And I think the other, piece may be that there are times that, what we talk about, provides a service maybe for the guests, something that they weren't aware of, or we help maybe inform some of their decisions because they're not sure what they want to do. So there's a little bit of that, I think, that goes into it. But, really just being able to talk about something that you and I are very passionate about. It's work, everything we do here, and we do 3 episodes a week. So, a lot of time goes into what are we going to talk about? If it's historical and that, making sure that it's something that's going to be of interest to our listeners. Just because you and I like something doesn't mean our listeners are going to. So we have to kind of talk about that and filter through and just see, what's the interest level and those kind of things. But I think maybe just go back to what, the little tagline is, that we're Kings Island fans doing a show for Kings Island fans. And that's who we answer to,
Right.
that's who we care about, and that we're doing it for them. And I think that's rewarding too, that there's no other agenda there. It's just us talking about Kings Island and just doing a show for the Kings Island fans.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, because we're very, very much independent in every way possible. Like, obviously, we're not owned by the park, and nor do we really have any kind of formal relationship with the park. So, with that being said, if we hate something, we can talk about it. If I'm missing a hush puppy, I'll talk about it on the show. If your pig pen's hot dog is cold, we'll talk about it on the show. We just
Yeah, well,
talk about what we.
that makes it genuine and authentic, and I
Yes.
think that resonates with our listeners, is that it's coming from experience, it's coming from the heart, and I think they appreciate that there's no
Yeah.
no agenda, there's no messaging that we're trying to force on anyone or anything like that, and we're just talking about the park.
There's no
And
messaging, but by the way, buy a Tower Topics T-shirt. So
well,
there's
that's
some
about that's
messaging.
that's different. I'm talking about, like, hey, can you talk about, make sure you get the plug-in for season pass. Hey, make sure you
Yeah,
get the plug-in for this. Hey, make sure you get the plug-in for this new show. We talk about the new show because we like the new show, not because we're asked to do it.
yeah, and that was one of the things where, like, why I was so excited to talk about the Gazillion Bubble show, because I said on a because somebody asked the listener question, what are you more excited about, the new stunt show or the Bubble show? And I think I said the Bubble show, because I want to go there and I want to be proved wrong, and I want to come on here and say that I was wrong and the show's awesome. So when I saw it and I was wrong, and I got the opportunity to convey a positive message of, like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, this is awesome, go see it. I was wrong about it. Disregard what I said before. I was wrong. Like, I was excited to do that. The last thing that I want to do is come on here and be like, yeah, it was a dude blowing bubbles and the lasers were cool. And then, all right, what's the listener question? That's not a fun show to
Right.
do. So we want and need the park to win, because we get excited when they do, when they're successful and things are
Mm-hmm.
good. And then there are times when there are things that we just didn't enjoy. We just won't do a show on it, because what are we going to talk about? Yeah, I had Tom and She. Yeah, it was kind of cold. I like the old location better. Not that that was a situation, but that's not a show, you know. But us coming on here saying we tried the new pig pench, it was so good. Like, that's a show. Well, we can make 15 minutes, half hour out of that. But yeah, that was a very, very, very good question. So the next one, that was only the first listener question. We went on so long about that.
As
The
we
next one,
often do.
Doug F. from the cornfields of Florence, Kentucky. I'm not far from you, Doug. He asked, what inspired you to start Tower Topics? Well, the name came from the big tower in the middle of the park. I'll tell you that much.
Well, I mean, Ryan and I, even before we started the Attraction Group podcast, had always talked about wanting to do a show about Kings Island.
Mm-hmm.
And after we launched the Attraction Group podcast, we were limited at the time what we could do with that in terms of who the guests could be, because I was still working at Kings Island, and you can't have, it wouldn't have been the right thing to do to have somebody coming in, from Dollywood, Kentucky Kingdom, and Holiday World, and these other parks that we've had on there at that point in time. So we were kind of just talking about just the general, park news type things, and
Right.
we thought if we could ever do one about Kings Island, that would be great. So we were at a Reds game, and I think we were just kicking around some ideas on names and that, and I think Tower Topics came up, and Ryan was like, I think I could do a pretty cool logo with that. I mean, Ryan's very talented when it comes to graphics, and I bring the knowledge of the park history, he brings the technical part, with the skill set to make all these graphics and fun things that you see, and it just seemed like the perfect name. And this is early April, and we're like, we can't wait to get this thing started, but we had to wait until the time came where I departed Kings Island, and as soon as that happened,
Yeah, like 3 days later, we did our first episode.
Yeah, I was pretty excited about the opportunity to to branch out and do something that we had wanted to do for a long time. I mean, years before we even started Attractions Group, we just couldn't do it because of what I was doing, and I think at the time, Ryan, you had a different job too, where your hours were a little bit more, not conducive to having a set schedule all the time and everything, where we could just pick,
Yes.
these nights to record the show. And, it's always the right place, right time, and things happen for a reason. And I just think that, last summer it was like, okay, all the stars aligned. It's time to launch Tower Topics. And I think it keeps both of us, um, involved with, the park in a way that's fun for us.
Mhm.
And you and I would always just, the things we're talking about on here. I mean, Ryan and I would talk about this all the time. We'd see each other
Yeah,
out in the
that's all we
park,
talked about anyway.
or at a Reds game, we talk about these same things that we're talking about on the shows, these, banters
Yeah.
back and forth and stuff. And so we knew that it would work in a podcast format. We just had to get it started. But that was kind of the inspiration behind it.
Yeah, and then it's interesting how we split up the work amongst, like, because we're really good as far as filling in the gaps for each other. So a lot of the times, like the interview questions, Don writes, especially for AGP. But as far as getting these things online, I do all the 3D graphics, all that stuff. You know, so we both have a pretty good workload, but we do what we do best on each of our sides, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, well,
It
Ryan's
is
doing
really
all,
fun.
Ryan's out doing all that kind of work and with the graphics and putting all the effort into that. That's usually when I'm out working on my tan.
Exactly. Cool. Great question. All right. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir Longathon Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.